There? Okay, very good. Shalom, everybody. Again, I want to tell you before we start that we have a nice a ceremony for receiving the Torah for the second graders. It's a lot of pictures in the Facebook, and we are now in chapter 4. Chapter 4.
Five.
Chapter 5. We're in chapter 5. And we started with the numbers, right? That we say is very different chapter 5 than the previous one. The previous one were sayings of some rabbis. Here is we don't know who's saying the things, and everything started with numbers. So we did number 10, and we say the number 10 is related to the divine. The world was created with 10 sayings, utterance. There were 10 generations from Adam to Adam to Noah, and from Noah to Abraham. With 10 tests, God tasted the faith of Abraham. 10 miracles were performed for our fathers. 10 things were created. So the 10 was related to God, the divine. And we say that when I look at my hands, I see 10 fingers. So I was created in God's image. So 10, that's what is symbolized, the God's, the creation, the divine. And I talk about the difference between the number 10 and the number 12. Then we say there is 7 things. In the number 7, I talk about the spirituality, and now we began with 5 mishnayot, 5 sayings about the types of personalities of different kind of people. That will be today, the next times, and so they are the number 4. Now the number 4 means also the complete, but the complete in the sequence of AA, AB, BA, and BB. Let's see, for example, the 4 species. In Sukkot we have these 4 species. So one has taste, but doesn't have smell. One has smell, but doesn't have taste. One has smell and taste, and one doesn't have no smell and no taste, right? The A, B, B, A, B, B. The number 4 was very important for our sages. So try to think, for example, in Passover, when we talk about the 4 children, right? Why not 7 children or 10 children or 12 children, like because they wanted to say the 4 different possibilities of having a son, right? That's very similar to what we have in here, or maybe the opposite is they're using what is in our tractate. We drink 4 glasses of wine, and so the number 4 is also very present on Judaism. Today we started this 4 personalities, 4 kind of people, with Arba Midot Ba'adam. There are 4 types of 4 types of people. האומר שלי שלך ושלך שלי עם הארץ. One who says what is mine is yours and what is yours is mine is a boor. He doesn't know, it's yours, it's mine. You know, it's there. There are sometimes these kind of kids that they say, I took yours, you took mine, you can have me. Nothing belongs to nobody. He doesn't understand that some people has his position, so there is no limits. He has no limits. But on the other hand, is also there's no limits whatever he says. Is an interesting personality, I must say. sages were more formal, and that's why they called them Amaretz, Bur. One who says Sheli, Sheli, Shelcha, Shelcha, what is mine, and what is yours, yours, we should say in our days, that's awesome, you know? What is mine, what is yours. Perfect. The sages don't like this kind of people. They call them Midah Benoni. This is a medium characteristics. And others says this is the character of the Sodomite. These are like the Sodomites is not a people very well regarded in the Bible, as you know. Sodom and Amorah, Sodom and Gomorrah, it's not the nicest people. So if you say what is mine, and what is yours, this is people from Sodom is kind of astonishment, you know, it's something you will not expect that they will say. So I'm going to elaborate a little bit on this one. The third one is one who say, Sheli shelach, veshelach shelach, what is mine is yours, and what is yours is yours. This is a Hasid, it's a pious person. I have to elaborate too. The last one, I think we all conclude that that is understandable. One who say what is mine, and what is yours is mine, is a Rasha, is a wicked. Shelcha, sheli. Everything belongs to me, nothing belongs to you. That's not a nice person. So the first one is I don't know, kind of out of focus. He's a boor. He doesn't understand what the property means, what the limits of the person is. But let's talk about the other two. One who say who is mine, and what is yours is yours. What's wrong with that? You should say nothing is wrong. Actually, this is how our society works. What is mine, what is yours is yours. The problem is that when for the sages especially, when you say what is mine, and what is yours, it's I take care of myself. You have a problem, it's your problem. I mean, this is the capitalistic society, which we all live in this. The people that was born disadvantaged or that life make them disadvantaged, they have no possibility to exist in this kind of society. So for me, everything is good. You have a problem, it's your problem. The sages don't like this kind of personality, and they say it is at the maximum is a Benoni, is a medium, is an average. He cannot be a righteous person. But at the most, if he really can help others, let's think, for example, somebody has a lot of, talking an ancient time, somebody has a lot of, he works in agriculture and he have a good luck and he has a lot of food. And on the other side of the town, the agriculture is a disaster for, I don't know, what, some catastrophe, and they have nothing to eat. So the one saying, look, for me it was good. I have food, I feed myself, my family, and my friends. The other one, the poor, they die of hunger. Well, it's not my problem. With this kind of person, you cannot make a society. It's very hard to live in a society if somebody is not willing to help when he can. And that's why the sages don't like, because the sages like cooperation. It's not so simple. Everything looks simple, but it doesn't look so simple. The other one that I wanted to say is the one they say, what is mine is yours, and what is yours is yours. It's also, here they give him the highest grade. He's a pious person. He's saying, nothing is mine. Actually, everything belongs to you. There is a problem with this person also. He doesn't take care of himself, and he doesn't maybe take care of his family. He's not the idea too. So what is the conclusion with all of these four of them? none of them is 100% ideal. That's the tough part. I think when Professor Lachter is going to explain about people that they get anger or get appeased easily or not, we will see that it's only one. There's only one that come out perfect. That's the one that you cannot make him angry, never, and he gets very easily appeased. That will be the idea. It's not so simple. The more you read this Mishnah that looks so simple, it makes us think how is complex our personalities are, and how difficult it is to improve. So, which way you're going to improve in the first one, or is minus minus? So, I would say, if you work very hard, and then you can be generous. That will be the ideal for us. If you work very hard, but you're not willing to give some of what you work to others that need it, that will be not the idea. So maybe the capitalism with philanthropy, there will be more the way of ideal. I think also for the sages, also for me, but not so simple. This is not so simple. How much, how to give. That's why they, at the end, they bring the issue of tzedakah. They figure out that this saying is not so complete. So at the end will be tzedakah. How you give to others, and the Rambam is going to elaborate a lot on this. The last thing I wanted to say is that also with the anger and also with the giving, we are not 100%. You cannot say, because one day I was easy to get angry. That means that I'm an angry person forever. No, you can have a bad day. And maybe you have a bad day, but the next day you just restart the day, and then you're less likely to be angry. And everybody has the good days and the bad days. So if we want to improve ourselves also in these types of temperaments or personalities or person, we have to give ourselves some reinforcement. Say, okay, one day I was angry, I was not nice. It's not the end of the world. It's not mean that I'm an angry person. I just have a bad moment. And then I have to try to have less days being angry. And nobody is perfect, and nobody can do everything that is written in this book. Is only an ideal that you look toward as, or something that give you a possibility to improve. But you cannot do 100% of what's written here. No, and nobody expected you will be 100%. And I look at the people that I'm looking now, very nice people. So you have a very good grade from me, all of you. Okay, I finished with this. I'm giving you the microphone.
Okay, well, let's see if I can find the, no.
You're going to say the blessing?
Yes, I'm looking for my Zoom.
And then I put myself on mute.
Okay, so we start with our blessing for studying Torah today, and anyone who wants can unmute or just say aloud for themselves. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed is God, King of the universe, who commands us to study Torah. Yes. Okay, so Edgar gave us some about the ideal, and he started Pirkei Avot with one Mishnah before. I've been skipping just a little bit to keep things moving, but he went for the one before. I guess that was 13 and 14, and maybe I did 14 and 15. So 13 was something that I had not sent to you. So I'm going to just read it for a moment. There are 4 character types among people. One who says, my property is mine and yours is an average. Some say it's characteristic of Zdom. Second type, mine is yours and yours is mine, is an unlearned person. Mine is yours and yours is scrupulously pious. Yours is mine and mine and mine, and mine is wicked. So that was a previous one of the 4s, and Edgar has emphasized the types we have here, the 4 types of characters, including the ideal and the idea of trying to get to an ideal character, which maybe we're all trying to do. Let's see if I can share my text here. No, not good. Not that. Share.
What you shared was the email.
There we go. Okay, and this is the text on the temperaments.
Okay.
Alba midot. Midot are character traits, but also can be translated as virtues. Bedeot. Noach lechos v'noach leratzot. יצא הפסדו בשכרו, קשה לכעוס וקשה לרצות, יצא שכרו בהפסדו. קשה לכעוס ונוח לרצות, חסיד. You see that word chasid, it has nothing to do with chasidut today, or maybe the chasidim hope it does. נוח לכעוס ונוח וקשה לרצות רשע. So these are the 4 types of temperaments. Someone who is easily angered and easily appealed. The virtue of easily appealed is canceling the flaw that he's easily angered. One whom it is difficult to anger and difficult to appease, his flaw, that is that it's difficult to appease, cancels his virtue, that it's difficult to anger him. Someone whom it is difficult to anger and easily appease is a chassid, a righteous person or a virtuous person. And one who is easily angered and difficult to appease, that person is considered wicked. Well, how we know about anger, there's a classic expression that I wanted to use also in Hebrew because it kind of has alliteration in it. Adam nikal bekisok bekoso vebekaso, which says a person's character can be determined through their wallet, kiso, their money, koso, their behavior when they drink alcohol, when they're intoxicated, bekaso, and their anger. So that would be how you would recognize people. And now I asked a couple of questions here in terms of the judgments here, and when you get angry or how you sublimate or control your anger. And before I get into myself, because I'm a person who is considered to get angry too easily for too many years. I'm not sure that I've been judged about it recently, but maybe I got better. I've been working on it. And how easily each of us thinks that we're appeased as opposed to how fast we jump into anger. But I know that Lorena has to leave at 4 because she's leaving for, she's moving.
Sweden.
Houses. So,
Yeah.
Lorena, if you're unmuted, right?
Yes.
So, and you're a psychologist, something of a psychologist, a behavioral person as well. So let's hear your take on anger.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lachter. Yeah, so much is spoken about it, and it varies with time. There was a time when people thought anger was not good to express. Then there was a time in the 70s when you were given pillows and you had to scream and beat and get as much angry as you could. And now this is going a little bit less favorable again. But I do think that I agree with the Hasid that in general, it's good if you don't get angry in the sense that you really lose yourself. If you get a kind of anger that you hit people or you scream or you say bad things, I think that in general is not a very beneficial thing. But on the other hand, if a person never gets angry, you sometimes see that it comes out in many other ways, in spite or in depression or in loneliness or something. So maybe it's good to look at the kind of anger, but also to maybe have some place for anger, but that should be coupled with some reason, and at least afterwards what is spoken about, the appeasement, that you do something good with your anger. So if anger, if it is beneficial in the end, I would say it has a place. Yeah.
Okay, I'm understanding that there is a place for anger. And of course, the sages will also say that there are times to be angry. If you saw someone disparaging their parents, then that would be considered a reason you should be angry. And likewise, they use that metaphorically, that if someone is disparaging God, then that should be making you angry. But then how do you appease about that and how you handle it? So it's not like there is never a place for anger or always a place for appeasement.
Yes. Yes.
But I like your comment that, yes, people would sometimes hit pillows to let anger out. And that sounds like a fairly benign way to let anger out, as opposed to many of the other options in terms of how anger is dealt with. So the idea of this Mishnah includes that it would be unfair and it would be misplaced if people could not change the temperament that they have when they're born. And so it's kind of implicit in this Mishnah that self-transformation is inextricably bound up with the principle of free will. That is, it's possible for each of us as people to restructure and to modify our most basic characteristics. Okay, things that we're born with, obviously we have control and we have the ability to do something. And again, not that someone never gets angry. And Moses, the most humble of all people, exhibited anger, and Pinchas in the Bible displays anger on God's behalf when he behaves zealously. And so there are others whose anger is actually rewarded rather than punished. So it's not like we should never be angry. But some of the things that we say is that the sages have said here is that anyone who falls into a pattern of easily angered can lose perspective and begin to accept that anger as natural. People can say, "Oh, it doesn't matter if I'm angry; soon it'll pass," and maybe the friends and family are aware of this, and say, "Well, he'll be appeased easily," but maybe they won't. So you want to try and keep this under reasonable control, and that's a lot of what Avot is about. And I think Edgar has emphasized a number of times that this is dealing with ideals and what is the ideal, and we may never reach quite the ideal, but we can try to aim for it. So I think we'll go around a little bit and see how the rest dealt with this in terms of the judgments of the traits, or personally, anyone who's willing to share, what does get you angry or what you do. I don't know if anyone here is punching pillows, but what you do to sublimate anger. It's pretty hard in today's world where we have politics, economics, and sociology to have nothing that we get angry about. Well, let's start with Fred and Anita today, and then we'll have Liz. And Fred, what's making you angry? How are you dealing with that?
Well, what's happening politically makes me angry, and what's happening politically in several countries makes me angry. And I think I'm dealing with that by trying to see the humor in it. This made me think more about the meetings of our apartment owners group in our building. Our building has groups of Israeli native Sabras, French, Anglos, Russians, and they all approach this. They tend to approach this differently. For the Sabras, there seems to be a feeling that if you don't express things in a very angry fashion, they're not going to register. For the Anglos, it's more, we should say things diplomatically, or the other party is going to get offended, and it's what we say is not going to have the appropriate effect. The Russians and the French tend to be in between and somewhat more individual. So it's very interesting to see this from a sociological standpoint. And I was very impressed when the person who was leading the meeting, who was a Sabra, started speaking in English and said, "Don't get upset by this. This is just the way that we talk to each other. We're going to be friends again as soon as this is over." So I suppose that goes along with this. As long as it's okay to get angry as long as you forgive easily. And sometimes maybe you need to get angry in order to get a point across, but it depends on whom you're dealing with.
Well, that's very good, and that goes to the point that if you're friends, if your presumption, your entering assumption as you enter the situation is that your friends and family are aware of this temperament and know that you are going to be easily appeased, then they can temporarily ignore the outbursts until the person is appeased. So you have to know that it's a closed system, and that appeasement and peace is going to be accepted at the end. That's great. Anita, how are you dealing with anger these days?
Well, I'll give you 4 examples from clinical practice in which, as I sit back and think about them, there were times that I certainly could have become quite angry. And this clinical practice is in mental health. In 2 situations, one, I was slugged by a patient in an outpatient setting. In the second situation, a patient tried to strangle me. Okay, those are both incidences in which I certainly could have become quite angry, but I did not, as I reflect on it then, now. And I stepped back, and actually the way I dealt with it was to analyze the mistakes I had made, and I had made some mistakes. The third example, I did get angry. And in this situation, it was an inpatient unit in which a patient who had substance use disorders teased another patient who was off his medications in order to go on a new medication. So he had no control. He was somebody who was quite ill. And this particular patient teased him to suggest that he jump out the window. The patient went to do that and was stopped. I became very, very angry, as I recall, and removed the patient and informed the medical director that I would never, never, never admit a substance abuse patient onto that unit again. And that was the policy after that. But I was quite angry, which was very different from when I think back on it being physically assaulted, when I could have become angry. but this was different because he was hurting another patient. The fourth example was almost amusing, and I had a slight tinge of anger in that the head nurse from one of the units came in to me as the director of a certain part of the hospital and said, I owed her a silk blouse. I said, I don't see how I owe you a silk blouse. And she said, I got into the shower with a patient who had been homeless and needed a shower, and I ruined my blouse. And this situation, I knew her very well, but I told her there would be no new blouse and she should wear more appropriate clothes. But I didn't get angry at the patient. That was inappropriate. But I did show a tinge of anger toward her. So I think a lot of it depends upon who you're interacting with and the situation that you're in as to how much anger you're going to show to other people, and also depending upon their status. How can they control? Can they control this? I didn't think the first two patients could control what they did to me, though they certainly could have caused me grave injury. But I could have gotten angry, that's for sure, but I didn't. I'm not praising myself. I just handled it by looking at what could I've done to improve and looking at their status. So I think it's very difficult to have one view of anger or one view of how you might refer to anger in a variety of situations.
Well, that's excellent. And I'm sure others as well as I congratulate you that the anger is when someone else is being hurt. But you didn't get angry when it was you being hurt, then you could turn it around and look for the reasons and look for why you could handle it and be appeased by it. So that's really nice. Liz, and then we have Michael. And I hope that Michael's, when you unmute, that we'll be able to hear you right this time.
Wait, you're still on. Please be careful.
We okay there?
Hi.
Hi.
When I first read this about the slow and fast and anger and stuff, my first thought was, oh my gosh, that means I got to think about myself. Okay. And I know I get angry, but when I get angry, I keep it in. What do? I eat. And which I deal same way with anxiety and depression. I eat. But what you need to look at is, for example, my sister-in-law was somebody who would get angry, throw things, slam doors, and hold a grudge. And I was told I never did any of those things. And I was also one time commended for the fact that I don't hold a grudge. And if I get angry, I tend to think about the situation and try to pre-plan for if I get in that situation again, how I will react. Because I tend to, when I get angry, my throat just almost like tightens up and I don't say a word. And I tend to forgive, but I don't forget. And so that I'm aware that somebody who has made me angry has the potential to do it again. I certainly don't intentionally ever go anywhere or try to do anything to make people angry, but people get pissed off at me for other reasons, and you can't always predict how other people are going to react to in certain situations. So that's basically it.
Well, certainly eating is, I can tell you as a gastroenterologist, is an expression of emotion in many directions. Emotional eating being a sublimation that some people try to control. Of course, when they control it and they say, okay, so I'm not going to eat when I'm mad, then instead they do something else which might not be so good, rather than overeating. But the awareness that that's a pattern is something that each of us can try to interfere with. and try, as so much of Pirkei Avot, and that will be next week as well, lead us towards how we should be trying to perfect or lead our character to be more of the chassid, not a chassid in the sense of current words, but in terms of a righteous or pious person. Michael, first of all, tell me if you did get the email, because of,
Yes.
I did put you. Yes, good. Okay, so we're
I got
back on
that from
that, and now we can
everybody.
hear you well too. Let's hear your perspective.
I think no matter what you do, we all get angry, but you have to understand reasons for it. Holding anger in is probably the worst thing of all because it's going to tend to eat you up and fester. Letting it out, as long as you don't take drastic or violent action, is probably the safest and best thing for you as an individual. Sometimes it's also important to know why the person gets angry or why they get mad at you. And I think back upon an incident that occurred probably at least 50 years ago, 45 years ago. I had a friend and we had a fight at a certain time of the year. And we weren't talking to each other for 6 months. Uh, and then the other friend said to me, do you know why you two had a fight? I said, no. He just became angry. And he said, well, maybe just forget it. If you knew why he became angry, you would accept it. No matter what happened, no matter what you would say or what you would do during the last week of July, you were wrong. And his other friend said to me, well, what you don't know is as a child, his father laid down to rest after a long day's work, never got up and died. He was almost killed in a car accident. These are years apart, all of this. And then his closest grandmother all died. So I said, oh, so in short, stay away from him during that period of time because I know that's why he's going to get angry. And then and if he says anything, just shrug it off your shoulders. So sometimes it's knowing why there is anger. It's situations that you may not be aware of that may have caused the anger. You may have said something that was actually innocent, but that person did not take it that way based on something in their own past.
Okay, well, that sounds definitely diplomatic in terms of exploring the depth and the reasons for anger, and we did learn not to console a person while the dead is still before them. That is, when a person is at their most stressed, and you might not know it because it may be a PTSD situation as you're describing, then that's when they're really not available to be appeased or to explain. And so getting to the depth of why there is an anger is important. That's great. Fran?
Okay,
And then we'll have Nathan, you'll be ready.
I'm not going to start. I'll preface my remarks by saying I did not always feel or behave the way I'm describing, but this really describes me today. I've become very aware of the fact that anger takes a toll on the angry person. Whether they keep it in or whether they let it out, they become involved with the feeling, and it's an emotional drain. And very often when something happens that theoretically I could be angry about, I'm able to stop and examine it and think, is this worth my getting angry about? Because it will be a drain on me. And a lot of times I said, nope, this is something I can't do anything about. It is what it is. And I just let it go rather than get involved in a negative emotion about it. I don't always do that, but I do it more than I used to. I have a little bit of a quibble about the comments, though, that we read, where it says that one whom it is difficult to anger and difficult to appease, his flaw cancels his virtue. And I have a little bit of an argument. If a person is difficult to anger, and he becomes angry about something, it's got to be something really heavy, really serious, and possibly something for which appeasement is not even possible. So if somebody was deeply angry about something and I knew they were not easily angered, I would give them credit, even if they were not appeased or available for being appeased on the subject, that it was something for which there was no appeasement, or there's only very late appeasement. So that's there are some things you just can't forgive, in essence.
Well, I like both that you're saying that the anger takes a toll on the angry person themselves. That is, that person themselves is losing. And by losing control, yes, you're losing some level of your personhood, or downgrading some level of that you're behaving at. And you continue what Michael says, that it depends on why someone got angry. If it's someone who's rarely gets angry and then once does, then that would mean that that's not his usual trait. And so digging down deep to see the reasons can be very important. Can be very important indeed. Nathan, you're up, and then Floris.
I guess in a way, there's maybe different forms of anger. Regarding October 7th, I remember being extremely angry about what occurred that day, and at Hamas, et cetera, and but somehow you have to learn to live with it, and whether it's through things like exercise, whether it's gym or qigong or tai chi and things like that, you have to learn how to relax and just live with it. I also kind of echoing what Fred says, although I don't see the humor in it, some of our political leaders just are outrageous. But I do get reminded of what Harry Truman said, that the buck stops here, because we have a lot of our political leaders just don't want to take responsibility for things that occurred, whether it's October 7th or whatever, because they won't, they purposely won't do what's been done in the past in Israel for various things, commission of inquiry. And then I guess maybe it's a lighter note, I do get mad at myself at times for doing something stupid. And then I get reminded of the old saying about no use crying over spilt milk. It's so that type of stuff. But
Well, that's good. I'm gonna be provocative there in terms of the extreme anger at Hamas on October 7th, because one of the options that never seemed to get weighed was perhaps on October 8th or 9th, when the situation was at full stop and Hamas was not active and Israel was not yet active. Conceivably containing that anger and deciding to make a prisoner exchange then would have been possible, rather than the response out of anger that we have to go to war, we have to topple the entire Hamas, and that the only way to get anything done with the people we're angry at is by shooting them, killing them, or imprisoning them. And it's very hard to withhold one's own anger, and going to the gym is a good example, but to withhold the anger of the general population, also very hard. And a leader who restrains too much obviously will get replaced, but one who allows the release of anger and the expression of anger into violence, is is also just kind of following rather than leading. And that's one of my disappointments with what's been going on since October 7th, is how much people are acting out of anger or revenge rather than a cool-headed approach to resolve the very deep problems we have going on. Floris is good at these deep problems. Go ahead, Floris, and then we'll hear from Gilshan.
Yes, taking a different line. There's something about me when I hear negative things about a whole lot of things, I think it can't be all negative. There's got to be positive. So yes, anger, everyone's displayed how what they have done with anger and that. But in my work, if someone was suffering with depression, once they started getting angry, it was a sign that they were getting better, because anger gives energy. And so a depressive person, those who are medical will know, the person has no energy to do anything. It's you can't motivate them. But once they start getting angry, or someone who's a patient in a hospital, you always hear, oh, they're getting better because they're complaining. So anger gives energy. So that's the positive bit about anger, which I needed to say because I just can't cope with something being 100% bad. There's always a little bit of something that's good. Now, before I could, after my training, before I could see couples, I had to go into therapy. And I thought, oh, I'll be finished in 2 weeks. She's going to say, such a lovely person, always happy, pleasant, and everything. I would cry every week, knocking on the door. I hadn't realized that we all have all these emotions: envy, jealousy, anger. And what was explained to me, which really enabled me, there's nothing wrong with being angry. It's what you do with the anger that's important. And I was able then to pass that on, that once you acknowledge, and then of course it's much harder to say to someone, you know, that what you did, what you said made me angry, as opposed to acting out the anger. So of course that takes time to come. And I found that over time, I also, firstly, I don't get angry very quickly. And I think it was Liz who said that when something makes her angry, she sort of freezes up. And that's exactly when I'm in the supermarket or somewhere and someone says something really unnecessary or hurtful, I just cannot respond. I just freeze up. And then I get cross with myself when I walk away and think, why didn't I say something? I wouldn't have said it in an angry tone, but I just didn't have the tools to be able to answer. So I don't know where I come. And I think it also depends who makes you angry. When it's grandchildren who sort of kick you, and if you've got tights on, I don't know what Americans call it, but we call it tights, and it laggers, you can't really say anything to the grandchild, yes? You just say, no, it's all right, darling, right? So I think it depends who makes you angry. Some people I don't respond to because I think, they've just had a bad day, I'm more tolerant. But if it's uncalled for, when I made Aliyah many years ago and I was standing in the supermarket, a woman came up to me. I'd been waiting a quarter of an hour. She came up and she said, I was in front of you. I said, how could you be? I've been here 15 minutes. She said, no, I was in front of you. I said, just a minute. Am I invisible? She said, Ma. So I asked someone to translate into Hebrew to ask her if I was invisible. So she answered no. So I said, well, I was here for a quarter of an hour. So then I learned that is, I think that's what Fred said. This is how Israelis are. they shout, they don't mean anything. That is their personality. And so therefore I don't respond. I think, they didn't go to the charm school I went, so it's not their fault. So I think that's me. I don't know if I have answered the questions, but I think I'm quick to forgive. I think I don't bother, and also fortunately I forget what the whole situation is, so I don't carry it on.
Great. Well, I think if I could respond to that, when you talked about freezing up when you get angry, I think part of anger is a response to a threat. Sometimes our response is to get angry, and of course the response can be fight, flight, or freeze, and those are our stress responses. And when we're angry, when we're all stressed up, as you said, when people are not so depressed that they're not going to respond, but they have the energy, then those are our choices. Whether we really choose actively to fight, flight, or freeze is a matter of how much self-control we have, how much time, and what the situation is. What we say in the army is that there's firing a shot in anger, right? That when you're actually shooting at somebody, it's a firing in anger that you're mad enough that you're willing to start shoot at them, and that they've threatened you enough, you feel vulnerable enough to start shooting, and so it can be again in those situations. But I think part of what we're talking about here is that the anger is often a response to some kind of threat, and some of us have described how we internalize it and sublimate it with eating or going to the gym or punching a pillow, and some of us, or some of the time when we're more successful or more diplomatic, we manage to dive a little deeper and deal with the person in terms of what's going on. Gershon?
So of course, by now most things have been covered pretty well by all the other people. I'll add a personal story. I mean, I'm married 45 years, and I've been a partner in raising 2 children. So there's no doubt that I've had plenty of occasions to be angry over various things. But the one that actually comes to mind is before all that, almost 50 years ago. I had a long-term relationship with a woman I knew from school, and we got into an argument over something, no idea what. And at some point during it, I slammed my fist down on a wooden table, of course, using my dominant hand, which caused no problem at all for the table, but a great deal of pain for me. And it didn't take me long to figure out that I had a problem, that I wasn't dealing with anger or something well. So the result of it was about 7 years of weekly psychotherapy, and from which I learned a great deal and understood more about how I was reacting. It was also a time when I considered myself an anti-war pacifist, so it seemed very out of character. And some years after that, when I was working in my first echocardiography lab, I learned some about the Mediterranean approach to things, which has been talked about here. I had a cardiology fellow. Part of my function was to teach them the technical aspects of echocardiography. So they would come to my lab and watch me do patients. They would try to examine patients. And so one of them, this fellow was behind the curtain and examining a patient, and the phone rang in the pre-cell phone era. and it was his wife. So I told him she was on the phone. He came out and got extremely upset. I think it was the car had died again, something like that. And he starts screaming at her. And he finishes the phone call, puts the phone down, and turns to go back to the patient. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. The horrified look on the patient's face was impressive. And he didn't understand why I made him sit that one out because he was fine. He was all back to normal. It had released, and he went on with wanted to go on with things. But we talked about it later and came to an understanding that that would not be done that way. So in the decades since then, I've learned some different things. One of the big ones being that how I feel at this moment is not necessarily how I will feel about the same situation tomorrow. And in general, the way I will feel tomorrow will result in much more productive results than if I act on how I feel at the moment. So that's been one of my major things in dealing with anger, is just to be silent for the moment and come back the next day with a reasonable conversation. I think it has saved much aggravation and trouble in my life, both professionally and personally. So I'll leave it at that.
Right. Well, we're all at an age where we're looking back, and it's interesting that a lot of the examples are 45 and 50 years ago rather than last week, other than October 7th, which was, of course, very recent and still feels very raw. I did, as usual, talk to my wife about what to do when angry, and she made the point of listening really carefully to what the other person is saying that kind of makes us feel angry, or that if they're not making us feel, that we are feeling angry about, and trying to understand the situation or the other person who's saying that. So I would say, from my own example, that I get angry when my authority, especially professionally, but as a parent also, is canceled or belittled. But to do that, I think one of the main things to do is to try and call it by name, to recognize, to step back and say, what am I really hearing here? And what is that person really trying to say to me? And I just lost my share. Is this it? Yes. So before we go into 4 types of giving charity next week, I had included the second, which is something that you can all try and take home. And it's not easy. I think the older we get, it may be the hardest. It may get harder, but that there are 4 types of student. One who is quick to understand and quick to forget. The flaw cancels the virtue. One who is slow to understand and slow to forget. Well, the virtue cancels the flaw. If you're quick to understand and slow to forget, that's the best portion. And that's what we're all hoping for. How well we remember lessons we learn at this age, how quickly we understand them and how slowly we forget them. Well, hopefully we can understand with time, and you have to learn a lot of lessons a lot of times in order to really get them inside and internalized, and be slow to forget those lessons. But of course, they say that one who is slow to understand and also quick to forget what they learned, that's a bad portion. So let's all hope for a good portion, and that we will, in terms of students, all try to learn from each other to put the anger to its best purpose and not to its worst, and to positive things, and to recognize, as we have, that different people deal with their anger differently, but we may have some control over how each of us deals with our angers. And hopefully there won't be too many things that anger us, but it is part of life. It is part of life. And so I'm going to wish you all a peaceful Shabbat and look forward to next week when we're going to discuss 4 different aspects of how we treat the issue of tzedakah that Edgar gave you just a hint about, and we're going to get into it a little bit more. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Toda rabah, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye.
Thank
Great
you,
to study
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you. Look forward to the recording for those who